The transformation of intimacy into danger often happens quietly, long before anyone recognizes the moment when affection crosses into obsession. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, that transformation now unfolds around Taylor Hayes, Deacon Sharp, and the ever-looming shadow of Sheila Carter, whose love has never existed without possession, and whose fear of abandonment has always been capable of mutating into something lethal. What begins as emotional closeness between Taylor and Deacon slowly becomes, in Sheila's mind, a direct assault on her existence, a threat so severe that it cannot be reasoned away or endured. For Sheila, love is survival, and anyone who interferes with it becomes an enemy to be erased. As Taylor and Deacon grow closer, their bond deepens not through reckless passion, but through shared vulnerability. Each conversation carries the weight of confession, of wounds exposed and understood. Taylor believes she is helping Deacon navigate the fragile terrain of redemption, while Deacon believes he has finally found someone who sees him not as a liability, but as a man capable of change. Neither of them fully acknowledges how dangerous this connection appears from the outside, especially through the eyes of a woman who has never learned how to love without owning. To Sheila, every moment Taylor spends with Deacon feels like a theft, a deliberate intrusion into a relationship she considers hers by right, regardless of legality, morality, or consent. Sheila's fear does not erupt immediately. It simmers, fed by observation and interpretation. She begins to watch from a distance, her movements calculated, her presence nearly invisible. She studies Taylor's habits, the times she meets Deacon, the subtle shifts in Deacon's attention. Each glance he gives Taylor, each hesitation when Sheila speaks, confirms the narrative forming in her mind. Jealousy takes root not as a fleeting emotion, but as a governing principle, reshaping every thought. Possession replaces affection, and the idea of losing Deacon becomes indistinguishable from annihilation. Sheila convinces herself that she is not acting out of malice, but necessity. The decision to act is not impulsive. It is methodical. Sheila does not see herself as cruel, she sees herself as decisive. In her mind, Taylor is not a person but an obstacle, a variable that must be removed to restore balance. Sheila plans carefully, considering routes, locations, timing. She selects a place so remote it feels cut off from the world itself, somewhere silence reigns and rescue seems impossible. Each step of the plan reinforces her belief that this is the only way to protect what she loves. The absence of remorse is striking, replaced instead by a chilling sense of righteousness. When the abduction occurs, it is swift and disorienting. Taylor has no time to process what is happening, only the sudden realization that control has been ripped away. The world she knows vanishes behind closed doors and unfamiliar roads. By the time she understands the reality of her situation, she is isolated, held in a place chosen specifically to erase hope. Panic surges as Taylor comprehends that she is no longer a therapist, no longer an observer of trauma, but a captive inside someone else's nightmare. The irony is brutal. The woman who has spent her life helping others survive psychological terror now finds herself imprisoned by it. In captivity, time becomes distorted. Each moment stretches endlessly, punctuated by fear and the constant awareness of vulnerability. Taylor's mind races, analyzing Sheila's behavior even as dread threatens to overwhelm her. She understands Sheila's pathology all too well, recognizes the dangerous fusion of insecurity and entitlement driving her captor's actions. That knowledge offers no comfort. Insight does not equal safety. Instead, it sharpens the terror, because Taylor knows how far Sheila can go when she believes she is justified. Sheila does not hide her intentions for long. She contacts Deacon, her voice calm, controlled, almost tender, as though she is offering him a choice rather than issuing a threat. She demands that he sever all ties with Taylor, that he commit himself fully and irrevocably to her. To Sheila, this is not extortion but negotiation, a test of loyalty. She frames it as an opportunity for Deacon to prove his love, to demonstrate that she, not Taylor, is the woman he chooses. The cruelty lies not in the demand itself, but in the certainty with which Sheila believes compliance is inevitable. The warning is explicit. Sheila makes it clear that Taylor's safety depends entirely on Deacon's obedience. The implication is unmistakable: defiance will have consequences. Sheila does not raise her voice or indulge in theatrics. Her calmness is far more terrifying, because it suggests resolve rather than impulse. She asserts control with chilling confidence, positioning herself as the sole arbiter of Taylor's fate. In that moment, Deacon realizes that his past, his choices, and his entanglement with Sheila have led him to a crossroads where any decision carries unbearable cost. Deacon's despair is immediate and consuming. He is torn between two forces he never imagined would collide so violently. His feelings for Taylor are real, grounded in respect and emotional connection, yet he cannot ignore the responsibility he bears for placing her in danger. Guilt floods him, mingling with fear and anger at himself for underestimating Sheila's capacity for escalation. Each second he hesitates feels like a betrayal, yet each option before him seems to demand a different kind of betrayal. To choose Sheila is to sacrifice Taylor's trust and his own integrity. To refuse Sheila is to risk Taylor's life. As Deacon struggles, the ripple effects spread outward. Steffi Forrester receives a message that is deliberately vague yet unmistakably menacing. Sheila does not provide details, only implication, a suggestion that Taylor is in danger and that interference will make things worse. The message is designed to instill fear without inviting immediate action, a psychological tactic meant to paralyze rather than provoke. For Steffi, the impact is devastating. The inability to reach her mother confirms her worst fears, transforming concern into panic. Steffi's mind races as she pieces together the fragments. Sheila's history looms large, impossible to ignore. Every past act of violence, every warning sign dismissed as paranoia, resurfaces with renewed urgency. Steffi understands that Sheila's threats are never idle, that her calmness often precedes catastrophe. The helplessness of not knowing where Taylor is or what condition she is in gnaws at her relentlessly. Steffi is forced into an agonizing position, torn between the instinct to act immediately and the fear that doing so could trigger irreversible harm. Meanwhile, Taylor's captivity becomes a study in endurance. She oscillates between terror and determination, clinging to the hope that someone will notice her absence, that the silence will be broken. She analyzes Sheila's words, searching for cracks in her resolve, opportunities to appeal to reason or empathy. Yet each interaction confirms the depth of Sheila's delusion. Sheila speaks of love and protection, framing her actions as sacrifices made for the greater good of her relationship with Deacon. Taylor realizes that logic will not free her. Only exposure, only intervention from the outside, can end this ordeal. Sheila's sense of control intensifies as the situation progresses. The act of holding Taylor captive reinforces her belief in her own power, her ability to dictate outcomes. She begins to see herself not as a villain, but as a woman finally taking charge of her destiny. This self-perception is what makes her most dangerous. She no longer questions whether her actions are wrong, she questions only whether others will comply quickly enough. The absence of remorse becomes complete, replaced by a chilling conviction that she is doing what must be done. Deacon's internal conflict reaches a breaking point. He knows that time is working against Taylor, that every delay increases the risk. His desperation manifests in frantic attempts to find alternatives, to outmaneuver Sheila without provoking her. Yet he also recognizes the truth he has long avoided. His relationship with Sheila has always been defined by imbalance, by fear disguised as loyalty. Now that imbalance has reached its logical conclusion, Deacon is forced to confront the reality that his attempts to manage Sheila's behavior through appeasement have only empowered her. As Steffi grapples with Sheila's warning, her resolve hardens. She has faced Sheila before and survived, but this time the stakes feel unbearably high. The possibility of losing her mother reopens old wounds, reigniting anger and fear she thought she had buried. Steffi begins to consider her options carefully, understanding that impulsive action could play directly into Sheila's hands. Yet doing nothing feels equally dangerous. The balance between caution and urgency becomes almost impossible to maintain. The narrative converges toward an inevitable confrontation, shaped by choices made under duress and fear. Sheila believes she has engineered a perfect scenario, one in which love can be forced through threat and control. She underestimates the resilience of those she seeks to dominate, particularly the bond between mother and daughter, and the capacity for desperation to drive people toward courage rather than submission. Every move she makes tightens the tension, drawing all parties closer to a reckoning that cannot be postponed. In the isolation of her captivity, Taylor holds onto one truth with unwavering clarity: Sheila's power depends on secrecy. Exposure is the enemy. This understanding becomes her anchor, the thought that sustains her through moments of despair. She believes, perhaps naively, that love and loyalty outside these walls will eventually outweigh fear. Whether that belief is enough remains uncertain, but it is the only hope available. As Deacon faces the ultimatum, as Steffi struggles with the warning, and as Sheila watches from her self-appointed throne of control, the story enters its most dangerous phase. Each character stands at the edge of a choice that will define not only their relationships, but their moral boundaries. The question is no longer whether someone will be hurt, but how much damage will be done before the truth forces its way into the open. In this moment, the line between love and destruction has all but disappeared, leaving only the chilling certainty that obsession, once unleashed, rarely releases its grip without claiming something precious in return. The moment does not arrive with chaos, but with an unbearable stillness that feels almost merciful in its restraint. In the remote place where Taylor Hayes has been held, time has lost its shape, stretched thin by fear, exhaustion, and the constant effort to remain lucid in the face of terror. Taylor has long understood that survival is as much a mental discipline as a physical one. She has catalogued Sheila's patterns, listened for inconsistencies, searched for the smallest opening where reason might still exist. Yet even as she clings to the belief that someone will find her, that love will intervene before madness reaches its conclusion, another truth presses in with growing clarity. Sheila does not intend to let her go. For Sheila Carter, the act of holding Taylor captive has shifted something fundamental inside her. What began as a desperate attempt to protect her relationship with Deacon Sharp has hardened into a conviction that she alone has the right to decide how this story ends. Sheila no longer frames her actions as temporary or corrective. In her mind, Taylor's continued existence represents an ongoing threat, a living reminder that love can be taken from her at any moment. The longer Taylor remains alive, the more Sheila's control feels provisional, fragile, dependent on compliance rather than certainty. Deacon's refusal to fully submit to Sheila's ultimatum accelerates this transformation. His voice, strained with desperation and guilt, cannot mask the truth that he will never choose Sheila at the cost of Taylor's life. Even his attempts to placate her, to buy time, carry the unmistakable weight of resistance. Sheila hears it in the pauses, the careful phrasing, the lack of absolute surrender. To her, this hesitation is betrayal. It confirms her darkest fear, that Deacon's love, however entangled, is not enough to secure her future. The realization is catastrophic. In that moment, Sheila's logic collapses into something colder and far more dangerous. Taylor senses the shift before it manifests. There is a change in Sheila's demeanor, a tightening of resolve that strips away any remaining illusion of negotiation. Sheila no longer speaks of choices or loyalty. Her words become declarative, final, as though she is narrating an outcome that has already been decided. Taylor understands then that insight will not save her, that empathy has reached its limit. The woman standing before her is no longer reacting to fear, she is acting on certainty. The gun appears almost casually, an object Sheila has carried with familiarity for far too long. Its presence transforms the air, compressing it until breathing feels like an effort. Taylor does not scream. She does not beg. In the face of imminent death, she becomes startlingly still, her mind racing not with panic, but with clarity. She thinks of her children, of Steffi Forrester, of the life she tried to live with integrity despite repeated intrusions of violence and chaos. There is grief, yes, but also a profound sorrow that this moment exists at all, that love distorted into obsession has once again demanded a life as payment. Sheila does not see Taylor's humanity in that final instant. She sees only resolution. In her fractured logic, eliminating Taylor is not murder, but restoration, the removal of a threat that no one else was willing or able to neutralize. The shot is fired with terrifying decisiveness, a single act that collapses everything that came before it into irreversible finality. Taylor falls, and with her falls any remaining illusion that this situation could have ended without bloodshed. The silence afterward is absolute. For a brief, unbearable moment, Sheila stands alone with the reality of what she has done. There is no immediate triumph, no cathartic release. Instead, a hollow stillness settles in, heavy and suffocating. Taylor does not move. The life Sheila feared, resented, and sought to erase is gone, and with it disappears the narrative Sheila constructed to justify her actions. What remains is not safety, but exposure. The consequences begin to unfold almost immediately. Deacon senses it before he is told, an instinctive dread that tightens in his chest and steals his breath. When confirmation comes, it shatters him. The weight of responsibility crashes down with brutal force, leaving him drowning in guilt and rage. He understands now that his attempts to manage Sheila, to contain her volatility through compromise, did not protect Taylor. They enabled her destruction. The knowledge is unbearable, a permanent scar that will redefine how Deacon sees himself for the rest of his life. For Steffi, the loss is seismic. The moment she learns that her mother is gone, something inside her fractures beyond repair. Grief arrives not as a wave, but as an implosion, collapsing inward and leaving behind a void where certainty once lived. Taylor was not only her mother, but her anchor, the voice of reason she returned to after every storm. The brutality of Taylor's death at Sheila's hands reopens every wound Steffi has ever endured, layering fresh trauma onto old scars that never fully healed. Rage follows grief with frightening speed, sharp and focused, leaving no room for ambiguity. Sheila has crossed a line that can never be negotiated, forgiven, or rationalized away. The shock reverberates through every corner of their world. John Finnegan is forced to confront the most devastating truth of all, that his biological connection to Sheila has once again placed those he loves in mortal danger. Taylor's death is not an abstract tragedy to Finn. It is a personal failure that challenges everything he believes about responsibility, loyalty, and the limits of compassion. He knows that Sheila must be stopped, not managed, not reasoned with. The doctor who once believed in rehabilitation is now forced to accept that some patterns of violence escalate until they are confronted by force of law. Sheila, meanwhile, does not experience the aftermath as she imagined. There is no peace, no sense of victory. Instead, paranoia sets in almost immediately. Every sound feels like pursuit, every shadow like judgment. The act she believed would secure her future has only guaranteed its destruction. She becomes acutely aware that she has not removed a threat, but created an uncontainable storm. Taylor's death is not something that can be hidden, minimized, or reframed. It is a line that transforms obsession into undeniable evil. As the search intensifies and the truth emerges, Taylor's death becomes a rallying point rather than a conclusion. Steffi's grief hardens into resolve, fueling a determination to ensure that Sheila never again has the opportunity to harm anyone else. Deacon's sorrow becomes a catalyst for accountability, forcing him to confront his role in enabling Sheila's access to his life and to Taylor's. Finn's anguish crystallizes into action, aligning his professional oath to protect life with a personal commitment to stop the woman who has taken so much from him and from everyone he loves. Taylor's absence is felt everywhere, in conversations left unfinished, in guidance no longer available, in the quiet spaces where her presence once offered calm. Yet even in death, her impact endures. She becomes a symbol of the cost of unchecked obsession, of what happens when warning signs are ignored in the name of hope or love. Her life, defined by healing and empathy, stands in stark contrast to the violence that ended it, forcing those left behind to reckon with the truth that goodness alone cannot always deflect evil. The story does not end with Taylor's death. It fractures into multiple paths of reckoning, justice, and irreversible change. Sheila's actions have set forces in motion that will not stop until accountability is exacted. For Steffi, for Deacon, for Finn, and for everyone touched by Taylor's life, the future is now defined by a single, devastating certainty. Obsession has claimed its final victim, and nothing in their world will ever be the same again.
Oh,